many of us saw this coming in regards to the warning signs throughout the season for this Ohio State offense. The Buckeyes, we knew, had a young group of players surrounding J.T. Barrett at quarterback coming into the season. We knew that this was going to be an outstanding and dynamic team from a talent perspective, but in running an offense and getting an offensive line unit to play together and getting the cohesion between the quarterback and the wide receivers, it takes more than talent. It takes a lot of coaching, takes a lot of work, and it takes chemistry built over time, and they had a very young team. It still is a remarkable stat to me to believe that this team is the youngest playing FBS football. So they did make the Final Four, and yes, it ended brutally, but consider that it's the youngest team in college football. And so most of these guys are coming back. And we did, again, see the warning signs after the big statement that this team made at Oklahoma in scoring 45 points against Oklahoma. Then we saw the warning signs against Penn State in losing a late lead 21-7 and blowing that game and not being able to mount a last-minute drive because just the offensive line just could not stop the Penn State pass rush. We saw it against even the likes of a Northwestern team that finished 6-6, and certainly against Michigan in particular. Against Michigan State, a team that went 3-9 that took the Buckeyes to the wire in a 1-point loss. Ohio State was teetering on the brink most of the season and carried by its defense. And then it all came crashing down against Clemson, a very talented and poised and experienced team. So in looking at this Ohio State offense, a number of things come to mind in the aftermath of this shellacking against Clemson. First of all, we know that it hasn't happened to an Urban Meyer team ever, not being able to score 1 point. So you could blame it on the field goal kicker, Tyler Durbin. It certainly didn't help things when he failed to convert 2 field goals in the first quarter. One would have put Ohio State out in front 3-0. One would have gotten them close at 10-6. So it kind of, you would think, demoralized the defense, continuing to stop Clemson's offense and really making some plays on that side of the ball that the offense could generate nothing. And when the field goal kicker trots out there twice and misses, and you're giving up those points, that is not good. This is the first shutout for Ohio State football since going back to 1993. That's a long, long time. And ironically, it was in a championship type situation that season when the Buckeyes were undefeated with 1 tie and taking on their arch rival, the Michigan Wolverines, and losing. And they might have marched on to a national championship, but got whitewashed, as John Cooper often did, against Michigan, losing 28-0. Another thing here, left guard Michael Jordan had to leave the game, a true freshman who's had his issues this season, but definitely developed and matured throughout the campaign. He was playing his best football. He had to leave the second drive of the game, and his replacement was lost and beaten badly most of this game. I'm rarely the type that picks on play calling. So I know a lot of fans out there, a lot of you guys like to pick on play calling and think that you are master play callers. I don't necessarily typically go after the play calling, but I did notice a few things during this Ohio State effort. Curtis Samuel, of course, was pinned by Clemson. Dabo Swinney named him by name as the guy that we need to stop, and it was apparent that Clemson knew where he was on the field at all times. We see it during bowl season, during postseason play, that teams that even have anemic offenses that are very limited offensively have 4 and 5 weeks to prepare. We saw the likes of Wake Forest and Boston College come out with new plays, new sets, new wrinkles in the offense, alignments and plays that the opposing defensive coordinator had never seen, did not exist on tape because they had 4 or 5 weeks to add to the offensive concepts. Ohio State didn't seem to have done that and seemed to rely on the same plays that were the staple of the 2016 season. So for Curtis Samuel, that was the jet sweep. That was the lateral pass out in the flat, in which Clemson proved time after time after time that it had the speed and the playmakers to get to the outside to bottle him up with 3 or 4 tacklers. The thing that Ohio State failed to do in this game was give the ball to Mike Weber. Okay, the first 2 times he touched it, he did fumble. But before that ever came to fruition. Mike Weber was not given the football, and Ohio State was down 10-0, then 17-0. He had one carry for 5 yards. And the first 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 times Mike Weber touched the ball, once he finally got his hands on it, in addition to the 2 fumbles, one lost and one recovered by Ohio State, is that Mike Weber gashed the defense. J.T. Barrett, when he ran straight forward between the tackles, gashed the defense. Not huge plays, not 25 and 30-yard plays, but 8 and 10-yard runs by Mike Weber. But the game was pretty much out of hand at that point by the time they got around to their 1,000-yard running back carrying the football. The other thing curious to me in this game was the one pass play downfield went to Benjamin Victor, a guy that we've heard about in recruiting sorts. You will know the name Benjamin Victor. He's a big signee out of Florida for this Ohio State football team. So the freshman got on the field and caught a slant pass for 15 or 18 yards. Very impressive. Beat his man off the ball. And Ohio State's got a play downfield for maybe the first time the entire game. And then Victor's escorted to the sideline and not seen from for, I don't know, 3 or 4 more series. And then the next time we saw him, the game was out of hand. And he again beat his defender off the ball, off the line, and drew a pass interference call. We could have seen that earlier in the game, possibly, if Ohio State had any chance of winning. So before we get to our first guess, of course, the Buckeyes are shaking things up, and it's reminiscent of the last time they played Clemson in a postseason game 3 years ago. The defensive backfield in particular was shredded by Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, and Urban Meyer immediately made changes. Chris Ash was brought in to fix the secondary, and we've seen a tremendous top 5 Ohio State defense ever since. Now it's the offense. Kevin Wilson most likely added as offensive coordinator. Of course, most recently the Indiana head coach, and he's done a tremendous job, not necessarily in molding young men off the field. Those were some issues that led to his ouster at Indiana, but as offensive coordinator at Indiana. We know that Tim Beck is on his way to Texas, and most Buckeye fans not sorry to see him go, so he will reunite with Tom Herman there. And Ryan Day, the new quarterbacks coach, he has 15 years of NFL experience with a number of teams, most recently San Francisco and Philadelphia, and he led to an offensive uprising, his tutelage of quarterbacks at both BC and Temple. So is the Ohio State loss embarrassing? Yes. Is it tragic? No. This team will continue to recruit. Urban Meyer will be even more determined. And if anything, he has what he usually likes to have, and that's a motivational tool to head to 2017.